Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Guardians of Liberty podcast with myself, Nathan Parada, my co-host, Zachary Taylor, and joining us today is the treasurer of the Douglas County Libertarian Party, co-founder of the Facebook group Libertarian Atheist, and former host of the Libertarian Atheist podcast, JJ Frederick. Welcome to the show, JJ.
Thanks for having me.
Roads to Liberty presents the Guardians of Liberty with your hosts, Nathan Parada and Zach Taylor.
Now, last month in the lead up to Christmas, we did a two-part episode with Ben Keymichael, the Libertarian Christian. And we decided to make this kind of a series and talk to people of different faiths or non-faiths in the case of JJ, and kind of get their perspective on their views on religion and how that relates to the libertarian worldview. So welcome to the show, JJ. I guess to start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your background on atheism and how you came to be a libertarian.
Okay, well, I was raised in a Catholic household. At least Catholicism was important to my mother. She's still devout to this day. And as far as, you know, the journey towards atheism was what came first. In a catechism, you know, if you're familiar with Catholic Church, you know, that's where they prime you for your confirmation, and it's a lot of classroom learning. We were engaged with our priests a lot, and I guess I'm just kind of naturally skeptical, and I always had a lot of questions for him. He wasn't an authoritarian, luckily. He was always willing to answer questions and discuss things with me. But the more I questioned my faith, the more I realized, like, this doesn't make sense to me. And eventually, probably in my late teens, like 16 or so, I didn't know I was an atheist. I'm like, I don't think God is real. And it wasn't until I was probably in my 20s where I even knew what an atheist was, just because growing up in rural Iowa, you're kind of isolated from those things. Same with libertarianism. So in my 20s, you know, I've got a kind of a contrarian nature. So I really was dissatisfied with the two-party system, politics in general. Like, as I learned about it, I'm like, this is terrible. I mean, nobody's doing this right. Believe it or not, I actually turned to Marxism for a while. You know, what Marx said made sense, you know, because, I mean, it's clear that there's an imbalance of power. I mean, even the libertarians, but the fact that he blames it all on the rich, you know, that doesn't really follow logic. Actually, Liberty Magazine, which I think is published by the Cato Institute, at least was, and I'm not sure if it's still doing it, was available in the local bookstore, and I just picked it up out of curiosity. And that's what got me turned on to libertarianism. I believe Ron Paul did a couple op-ed pieces and some issues that I read. Bob Barr, Harry Brown, you know, definitely big libertarian names from the late 90s, early 2000s. And then finally, when I met my wife, my current wife, she was already a libertarian, and she just basically, you know, as we talk, you know, she's like, you already believe in the same things. Why don't you just, you know, because I still consider myself to be a pretty far leftist when we met. She's, you know, she basically convinced me to drop the Marxist baggage I was carrying. And now
is Marxist thought common with a lot of atheists? Because I find that a lot of, I know, because communism is an atheistic idea. I mean, it's one of the things that Marx teaches is to be an atheist. But
Yeah,
so
I believe it was Marx who said that religion is the opiate of the masses, if I'm not misattributing that quote.
yeah, so I know communists are atheists. That doesn't necessarily mean that an atheist would be a communist, but is it common for a lot of atheists to drift towards Marxism, even if only temporarily?
Yes, it is, and it's because of the Marxists, because the left has always kind of aimed to politicize atheism. I mean, atheism, as far as I'm concerned, has no business being politicized. At the end of the day, all it is a lack of belief in God. I mean, what's the point of politicizing that? Anybody could be an atheist. That's why you have, as an example, you have what I would consider a far right-wing atheist, Richard Spencer. I mean, if you didn't know he was an atheist, he is, and he's, a Nazi basically. So it could be anybody from anywhere in the political spectrum.
So real quick, I want to jump in here because I get to be the one that looks this stuff up. The full quote is: "Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people."
Yeah, that sounds like something Marx might say.
I knew there was more to it than just the religion of the opiate of the masses. A lot of quotes just kind of get condensed down in the Clip Notes version.
All right, so now that you're a part of the Libertarian Party, like I said, you're the treasurer of the Douglas County Libertarian Party. You've been an active member in the party for quite some time. How do you see the demographics in the LP? Are there more atheists or theists? And do you see the prominence of one or the other as a good or bad thing?
I think overall in the Libertarian Party, I mean, especially locally with our county party, the demographics kind of scale to the overall demographics. Most people in our party are, believers of some sort, usually Christian. You have your atheists. I think by and large, you might find a higher percentage of atheists in the Libertarian Party, certainly compared to the Republican Party. I think Republican atheists are a lot more rare than Libertarian atheists, at least as a percentage of the total group.
So we talked to Ben in his episodes about whether or not he saw atheists and religious folks within the Libertarian Party being able to get along and further the values of libertarianism without so much infighting between the different religious or non-religious. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't see why not, because the Libertarian Party, as with basically every American political party I can think of, is at the end of the day, it's secular. You don't have to be a particular faith or lack thereof to be a libertarian. They're concerned with policy. They're concerned with legislation, or, in case of us libertarians trying to reverse as much legislation as possible to reduce the size of government. There's no reason to conflate, religious belief or lack thereof with being a libertarian. So I think if we're going to focus on libertarian principles and libertarian goals, there's no reason why atheists and Christian libertarians or Jew, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever libertarians can't get along if they share those common goals.
Yeah, I would essentially agree with that. I think most people within the Libertarian Party have no problem getting along with people of different faiths or non-faiths. It's not a common schism that I see. It does pop up every now and then, where you'll always see somebody claiming that you can't be a libertarian if you're also X or Y or whatever the case may be. That you're not a true libertarian if you are a Christian, because Christians devote their loyalty to God first, or you can't be a libertarian if you're an atheist because atheists have funding or whatever the case may be.
I think
But
the argument is you can't be a libertarian if you're an atheist, because you have to get your morals from somewhere, and if your morals and ethics aren't informed by the state, like a libertarian would avoid doing, then you have to get them from God. And then if you're a libertarian atheist, then you're just, this degenerate anarchist, basically. So that's
let's talk about that for a sec. Let's talk about that for a second, because that's a common criticism of atheism as a whole, not just for libertarian atheists. That what is the moral grounding of atheists? And I know atheism is just a lack of belief in religion. So every atheist essentially is going to give you a different answer to this question. There's a million different philosophies out there that gain their moral founding without grounding it in religion per se. But for you, at least, what would you say is the moral basis of your libertarian belief?
A lot of that I refer to Enlightenment values, and of course, there's the non-aggression principle as a concept for ethics is pretty. I mean, it's a good starting point. But the Enlightenment values that our country is based upon is actually a good springboard for kind of coming up with a code of ethics. That's where I draw from. And I was thinking about just today, as a matter of fact, I was thinking about, in terms of morals and ethics, you have to, in a sense, ascribe to some version of social contract theory. And I know that libertarians hate the idea of the social contract. I think it comes personally. If you guys recall, in 2016, the Bernie Sanders supporters, for example, were really big on, if they got in a debate with a libertarian, that was one of their go-to arguments. It was like, what about the social contract? Don't you care about your fellow man? And then they would put that through the framework of, we need to have laws and government assistance programs to make sure that everyone is treated fairly. But really, the social contract theory is just kind of an agreement among people that, in a lot of ways, arises holistically and organically. So, as much as I hate to say it, I think just in societies in general, there's this kind of unspoken social contract at play. That's why people that aren't mentally ill avoid, committing acts of violence, or stealing from people.
I think it's like we have to have a social contract, or else we're gonna get that what everyone else thinks anarchy is, without an agreement between rational people to say, let's not kill each other and take each other's stuff. Right. Society descends into destruction and disorder.
And a lot of that,
we don't need the government for that necessarily.
Right, and like I was trying to express, it arises naturally. A lot of people don't, there's not a little contract. When I meet someone for the first time, I don't hand over this contract. It's like, okay, I want you to sign this and promise that you're not going to kill me and take my stuff. It's just kind of understood, unless you're dealing with a lunatic. It's kind of inherent, and I think Ayn Rand, she was a harsh critic of libertarianism, hated the Libertarian Party, while influencing it greatly, and also an atheist. She made a lot of good points about kind of how the objectivity of morality and ethics, how they just arise from kind of our social impulses, social animals, so to speak. So.
Yeah, I always find it I always found it a bit odd before I knew more about Ayn Rand that she would constantly criticize libertarians. Well, I'm reading her works and going, this is libertarian. Like, all of this is essentially libertarian. And I came to the realization eventually that she's not criticizing libertarians, she's criticizing anarchists. Because as much as a minarchist Ayn Rand was, she was not an anarchist, and she hated the very idea of anarchy. And back then, the only libertarians were Rothbardians.
Yeah.
So when she's criticizing libertarians at the time, what she's really criticizing is Murray Rothbard and anarcho-capitalism.
Right.
Which was synonymous with libertarianism at that point in time anyway.
I mean, yeah, Rothbard was instrumental in the foundation of the Libertarian Party that we know today. Really, he was really a key, figure in the early days for sure. And yeah, she believes strongly that you have to have a state in place to protect the basic rights that people would expect. The state needs to be in place to protect property rights and to defend national borders, and you got to have a police force for basic security, that type of thing. Rothbard, of course, believed, well, you can privatize all that, just get rid of the government and just make everything an industry.
Yeah, it really gives you some perspective that libertarian infighting is nothing new. When, like, the three major figures of libertarianism at the time, I'm talking about Ayn Rand, Murray Rothbard, and Milton Friedman, all fought with each other.
Viciously.
They were pretty close to each other in most issues, but they all found enough reasons to snipe at each other for whatever the case may be. I mean, Ayn Rand had a bad habit of going after people who are even her allies, and just in a nasty way.
She burned.
And she really did, and it's a shame because I love her books, but my goodness, that woman was vindictive.
That's no joke. Yeah, Atlas Shrugged, I tried to read the whole thing, and I got bored with it. Fountainhead is much better, in my opinion. I like that book a lot.
I say I prefer Atlas Shrugged. I found Fountainhead to be boring for the most part. I mean, I prefer listening to audiobooks, and Atlas Shrugged is a good 64 hours long on an audiobook, so it's freaking enormous. But I was, for the most part, fascinated by it. I mean, it was the first Ayn Rand book that I'd ever read. It was one of the first long political books that I'd ever read. I mean, most people find the plot boring, but I thought the plot was really interesting, too.
I mean, it can't be a longer book than Words of Radiance.
No, it is. It is a longer book than Words of Radiance. Yes, it is longer. Words of Radiance topped out at about 47 hours. So Atlas Shrugged on audiobook is a good, a good 10 plus hours on Words of Radiance. It's freaking huge.
Well,
it's good for people that have like an hour-long commute to work every day. So if you're going to listen to it on an audiobook.
Yeah, or someone like me who just drives for 5 hours a day.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
it's a truck driver's audiobook.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's one of those works that it's just, if you don't have the motivation to read it, don't even bother. That's why I always find, not all of them, but a lot of criticisms of Ayn Rand, you can tell that they never read anything she's ever written. And I can't necessarily blame them for that, because everything she's written is that freaking thick.
Yeah.
But if you're going to try to do a takedown of, say, Atlas Shrugged, you should at least know what it's about. I keep seeing this meme going around liberal circles where it's like, Atlas Shrugged is about a privileged white male and his war on society. I'm like, what? First of all, the main character of Atlas Shrugged is a woman, so you don't even know what this story's about.
Yeah.
Yes. let's get this back on topic, I guess, because we're here to talk about atheism. Here's another question: who, in your mind, are the most important atheist minds, past and present, in the libertarian movement?
Well, I mean, I think that's how we got on Ayn Rand is one of them. Murray Rothbard was actually, you know, he would just kind of shift terms willy-nilly, but all of them were non-religious. You know, he would say, I'm agnostic. He would say, I'm irreligious. He would say, I'm an atheist.
I thought he was Jewish, or is that just...
He called himself a Reformed Jew and raised as a Reformed Jew, but, I mean, his beliefs were pretty atheistic. He didn't really want to commit to the term, but, I mean, he did also use it in reference to himself. Usually,
most Jews aren't Ben Shapiro. It's more of a cultural identity thing than a religious identity thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where Rothbard was. It was his cultural identity more than his belief system, for sure. Probably another, and I think he's kind of an overlooked. He's either overlooked or controversial, depending upon the libertarian you ask. But Samuel Edward Compton III was also a non-believer. He wrote the New Libertarian Manifesto back in the 80s. Basically laid out the concept of agorism, which is, of course, a form of market anarchism, using counter economics to kind of starve the state. You want to avoid. Basically, if you want to be an agorist, you want to avoid doing business with anybody that's going to be paying taxes. So, don't go to Jiffy Lube to get car repairs. Ask your neighbor to do it and pay him under the table. Same thing if you need roofing done, or heck, if you're brave enough, if you know a retired doctor, pay him some cash to give you a checkup or something. That kind of thing. I mean, people always make fun of agorism. It's like, well, you guys just want to buy and sell drugs. I mean, you can as an agorist, but that's not the beginning and end of agorism. But he's, so probably those three would be the most significant libertarian or liberty-minded people that are atheists or non-believers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't see how exactly you do that, because it'd be very difficult if you're a dedicated agorist to avoid buying anything that it would involve paying taxes. Idea behind it, and it's not a bad idea, but in a consumerist society that we live in, it'd be very difficult to actually live out those principles, especially if you live in a city, like Omaha. It'd be very difficult to go about doing that.
I mean, I think in a way the goal of cryptocurrency was is kind of an agorist goal. I mean, you have this form of currency that's not regulated by the government. It's not getting taxed. I mean, well, I think it's being taxed now. Now that it's a publicly traded commodity, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, Carol Blood wants it to be taxed, so.
Oh, Carol Blood and soil.
So it was weird because we've been Mike and Ben talked about this a little bit, and we've been kind of talking about this in our group chats. She has this great bill on like legally enforced blockchain contracts, which is cool. Like I think like the enforcing contract law is about one of the few things government is good for, personally. And then she also tries to tax not just cryptocurrencies, but digital currencies. So like what Ben was saying about like my WoW gold, I need to go back on there and sell it all off before they pass this law, or else I'm going to get taxed for it.
She wants to tax your gold on World of Warcraft.
Yeah, essentially the way the bill is written would tax any any digital currency that would have a real world value.
And
so
Blizzard sells their, like, for $10 you can get about 40,000 gold on the market, something like that. It might be, it's changed. I haven't played in over a year, so there were times where my characters combined would have a couple million gold. That's a couple $100 at some point. Am I going to be taxed on that?
Well, if Cara Blood gets her way, yes.
Man. I mean, really, is that even enforceable ultimately?
No, it is not.
Probably. It would cost a lot more to enforce it than they would ever collect out of it.
Yeah.
Now, when's that ever stopped the government from doing something?
That's a good point.
Do you guys remember when Hardee's used to have their commercials about monuments of inefficiency? That always just reminded me of government, even as a kid.
I don't remember. I always remember Hardee's as having scantily clad women eating a cheeseburger.
Oh,
you know that is not how they got into that shape.
that was it was Paris Hilton, right? With that mound down that big fat burger, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was Hardee's. The Monument, a good series to start. Monuments efficiency, like everything they do.
I'm gonna put that on my my new little video page that I'm making. Go check out the United Libertarian on Facebook.
Shameless self-promotion. Yeah, I mean, let's do another question. Does atheism guide the political leanings of many atheists? And if so, what political ideologies does atheism naturally lead to?
Did we cover this already?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we kind of back end covered it because we were talking about Marxism and atheism.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. If you want to add more to that.
So would atheism inform your political beliefs? I guess is the question.
Yeah.
In a sense, probably. An atheist of whatever persuasion, because I mean, there's, people assume atheists are liberals, and a lot of them are, but there's conservative atheists too. But what's going to be important to any atheist, regardless, is probably the issue of religious freedom, because they want to have the freedom to express that they don't believe in God and they don't want to be persecuted for that. So atheists are naturally going to choose political parties that strongly support that concept. So in our current political environment, Libertarian Party and I guess Democrat Party probably would be your best two choices. The Republicans are coming around on that to an extent. They're not fire and brimstone as they used to be, but it's still, I don't feel the Republican Party would be as welcoming to atheists as maybe the Libertarians or the Democrats would be.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I remember when I was a kid, the Republicans being a lot more of that fire and brimstone type deal. I remember that a lot more in my youth than I see it now, especially with Donald Trump, who is not religious at all. It seems like a lot of that religious conservatism has taken a back seat in recent years in favor of a more populist message.
Yeah, and a lot of it, I think people got sick of the moralism and the moral panics that was caused by that hardline, religious, that politicized religion, in the 80s and 90s, the whole moral majority thing with the Republicans, people just kind of got tired of that. And I think, I don't want to go off on a tangent right now, but I mean, we're in moral panic today, but it's on the left instead of the right. But we can get into that.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I mean, because me and Zach have talked about this in the past, where the Puritanism used to be the sole domain of the right wing, when nowadays it seems like Puritanism has taken hold of the left wing, and the right has kind of backlashed against it. It's this weird switching. It's not really a switch of ideologies, because the Puritanism of the left isn't the same kind that it was on the right. It's not religious. It's more of the adoption of a social philosophy as opposed to religion. But it has led to a lot of the same kind of Puritan outrage being, on the left that it used to be on the right.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
And it's funny now, because that in itself created a backlash against it on the right again. So where the right wing used to be Puritans and the left wing used to be fighting against that, now it's the left wing being Puritans and the right has their Puritanism. It's a very weird conundrum that we find ourselves in.
I think the weirdest part about it is how quickly it shifted. I mean, you would expect, historically for that to happen, but it almost feels like it was overnight, honestly. Relatively in historical terms, in the past 10 years, this shift really did happen. Because even early in this century, the 21st century, the religious conservative hardliners, were still, trying to exercise this moral authority over everyone, and then it just the pendulum swung back the other way really, really quickly.
Yeah, for me, the biggest example I remember is a lot of people, because I lived in the South at the time, and a lot of people were outraged about the Harry Potter franchise. He was saying that it's promoting witchcraft and some nonsense like that. And that was a real thing. It was a big thing where I lived. A lot of people were legitimately believing this. It wasn't too long ago.
Dude, before that, it was the Pokemon scare.
Yes! I remember that too.
Magic the Gathering, too.
Oh, yeah. Like,
that's playing a card game, we get you possessed by the devil somehow. I remember that.
Magic used to be cool, okay? And then, like, the last year, they've just done everything they possibly can to destroy their product.
I think they destroyed their product in the late 90s, but that's just me being a hipster about gaming, I guess.
See, I was into it before it was cool.
I remember my friend tried to get me to play it before it was cool, like late 90s, and I thought it was dumb then. It's a fun concept, but they really have screwed up their product.
Did the social justice warriors get a hold of it? Because usually when they get a hold of it, that means it's going to hell.
They are getting a hold of it, actually.
They got a hold of the community, and the community went to crap because of it.
Oh,
yeah. I can't remember the name of the YouTuber, but there's one.
Jeremy Hambley?
That might be. He's a big ginger guy with a beard.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the guy. Yeah, because he started his channel to talk about magic, and he's just a huge fan of the game, and then the SJWs come in and ruin his hobby, like they've done with video games and whatever else.
No, we stopped him on video games. We took that back. We said this far and no further.
I mean, yeah, we've won some battles since Gamergate, but yeah,
bunch of racists.
No, that was sexist. Racist was a different thing.
That's why they always have to throw out every slur they can, just to make sure they get the right one in there.
Anyway, continue with the story about MTG headquarters.
I was mentioning something about that YouTuber, how he started off with his fan channel for Magic the Gathering, and then the SJWs infiltrated the community, and then his videos, of course, took a turn to complain about that, and now he's being lambasted by the SJWs. It's this horrible piece of trash.
But to be fair, he does say some controversial things. But a lot of times,
controversial things,
right?
How else are you going to get views on YouTube, though? I mean, let's be honest.
Right. Yeah. There. So what got him banned, essentially, Wizards banned him from all of their events and stole actually money of his because he had purchased digital cards and they deleted his account, so he lost all of that and they didn't give him money back for it. So he probably has a good lawsuit on that. But they banned him for saying that a specific cosplayer who is in the Magic community was selling sex or selling sex appeal. And if you look at this particular cosplayer's work, it's pretty obvious that's what she was doing.
I mean, I don't know about this person in particular, but I know on Facebook and other forms of social media, there's dedicated cosplayer fan pages. Isn't that all about selling your sex appeal?
Right. Some of them, like I have a friend who does cosplay, and for her, it is she likes the art form of dressing up, and she might look sexy in some of it, but it's not what it means for her. But this other cosplayer, the vast majority of her stuff was very revealing. And she was one of those people that definitely targeted younger men for Patreon donations. And even he said
transaction there then. So
yeah, he even said like, go ahead and, do your thing. That's, I respect the hustle, but don't lie about what you are. And I agree with that. Like I think prostitution should be legal. I don't care what you're doing, but don't BS me.
Isn't the big thing in intersectional feminism defending sex workers is like a valid occupation? But when someone gets called out as, I mean, maybe sex workers is obviously a strong term in this sense, but isn't calling someone, for lack of a better word, a sex worker okay then? I mean, the inconsistency is just mind-boggling.
No, because you see, it was a male that did it.
Oh,
that means it's not
okay. And a Trump supporter, makes it even worse to them.
The horror!
Why did you all assume his gender?
Oh, yeah. I think he is actually homosexual. My bad.
Got us. We're going off to SJW jail now. But see, it's a funny thing because it's not just like Magic that SJWs do this to. I've seen SJWs doing this to the Warhammer community. They got a hold of the freaking comic book industry.
Yeah.
They tried it with
now.
There
are not good comics anymore. There's a couple online comics that I read that are really good, but like comic books, they're terrible.
Yeah. They try and ruin anything that is fun. I'm a huge heavy metal music fan, and they've been trying, luckily failing, to destroy heavy metal. There was last year there was an incident. There was a black metal band from Norway, I believe, named Marduk. They actually did get one of their shows canceled because of threats from SJWs and Antifa, and it's basically because they were accused of being a Nazi band because they had a German World War II tank on one of their album covers.
What? Have these people never seen a heavy metal cover?
Yeah.
Also, the German World War II tanks look awesome. Like, German engineering in that period of history was so good.
No,
Zach,
they're not the album cover.
Complimenting their aesthetics makes you a Nazi, Zach. How dare you?
You would know better than anyone, I suppose.
I guess I've been called a Nazi more than anyone else here, so maybe I don't know if you've ever been called a Nazi, JJ.
I have, but I mean, it's weird that because like Zach and I are whiter than you, if I'm not mistaken. So how are you the most Nazi?
Yep.
Because I troll hard. Because I love trolling these people.
I have to be good because of my role doing social media and all that, so I don't get to troll like I used to. It's, Nathan gives 0 Fs about that.
No, I really don't. I love trolling these people. I love it to hell. But yeah, that's what they do. They just. What was that? Oh yeah, I did. I went to Facebook jail.
I've been in there a few times. Yeah.
I'm surprised I've only been in there once. It was just a 24-hour ban. But I was like, oh, get off this. Because you can't even use Messenger when you're on it. I'm like, how the heck am I going to talk to anybody?
I narrowly dodged a bullet a couple weeks ago. I was on a discussion thread with a bunch of SJWs, and I just expressed in no uncertain terms that Beyonce sucks. I don't like her. I'm not a fan of her music or anything.
How dare you?
Let's be honest. She was the worst member of Destiny's Child.
For sure. Kelly Rowland?
Yeah, she's good. Like, beautiful voice.
Beautiful. But yeah, I hated on Queen Bey, and someone reported my profile as being fake, so I had to upload a picture of myself to verify, and I avoided the zuck there. So,
you know what strikes me as funny, what you were talking about them going after heavy metal. That does not seem like a fan base that you want to be messing with. Is these people beat the crap out of each other for fun at their own events? So why would you want to mess with that? Like, I remember going to a heavy metal club in San Antonio when I was in basic training. I had no idea what I was going to. I liked Metallica and Slayer and thought, hey, I'm going to go to this metal club and listen to some music. And I go in, and I'm standing in a corner trying to avoid these people flinging their fists at me. This one dude knocked my drink out of my hand. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Yeah. So why on earth, if I can't imagine going in there and trying to start trouble because the metal bands don't adhere to my fragile sensibilities.
Yeah, and the majority of metal bands. I mean, there have been some, some frankly bigoted metal bands, but I mean, really, like the metal subculture. I mean, even though most shows you go to are a sausage fest, a few girls there are treated really well. They get in the mosh pit and they fall down. There's 10 hands reaching down to pick them back up. For example, when Rob Halford came out as gay, some dudes like, but everybody's like, shut up, Judas Priest is awesome. Who cares if he's
yeah.
So,
yeah, who the heck cares?
Right.
He's still one of the best metal singers out there.
Yeah. So I've always felt that heavy metal is pretty inclusive and not bigoted at all.
Yeah, but see, it does.
Like when you compare it to any other genre, it definitely country kind of has some. Maybe not as much now, but definitely in the past had a lot of ideas that maybe weren't the most loving and accepting of others. And rap is terrible about that.
Yeah. But rap's okay though. No one ever goes after rap for that stuff.
Well, they go after Eminem
because he's white.
He's white, but
so they can. But see, that's why Eminem is such a freaking pansy now. It's like, oh, I'm apologizing. I feel guilty about being white. Shut up. Shut up. You're a rapper. You're apologizing for being white. Shut your stupid mouth. I hate that stuff.
Do I have to apologize for, the birthmark on my butt cheek? Because, we're talking about how you're born. I'm sorry.
Is it shaped like a swastika? Because then maybe.
It is.
Ah, Nazi!
I did not see that coming.
I hope I never see that coming.
Right, so there's a question here that I want to hit. A couple different people actually asked this. Can atheistic libertarianism be pro-life? Because I'm actually seeing a lot more of this.
Yes, absolutely, it can be. atheism, again, doesn't really have to. It's just a rejection of the belief in God. It doesn't even really have to do with a person's morals. And there's strong, just secular arguments that you can make against abortion. I want to clarify that I'm actually a pro-choice person myself, but I have heard a lot of compelling arguments from a purely secular standpoint against abortion. So yes, you could be an atheist and pro-life.
Yeah, most arguments against abortion that I hear come from a secular, viewpoint. And maybe that's just because I hang out in more libertarian circles, and libertarians tend to shy away from religious arguments and rely more upon secular arguments. So maybe that's why. But when I see a debate going on between pro-choicers and pro-lifers, it usually is relying upon secular arguments as opposed to purely religious ones.
Well, the problem is, even if you are a believer yourself, to argue from a religious position is kind of it's kind of an informal fallacy in itself. It's definitely not a strong argument, even if because
it's cringy. Like, I'm a Jesus freak. I would never make a moral argument based on because God tells me, because it's just a cringy, weak argument. You're not going to convince someone if they don't already believe your premise. So,
exactly. I mean, if someone's not already, if you're arguing with a non-Christian that because God says this, therefore X, you're not going to get anywhere with that. And I think that's one of the reasons that the right has become less, radical evangelicals, because they've come to realize that those arguments don't really fly very much in the political sphere. People kind of laugh at it. Even a lot of Christians kind of go, "Oh, what are you doing?" when you get up on the floor and say, "God said this, therefore this should be law." No, it's not an argument you hear very much anymore.
The problem is the source, and this is why there's, I don't know, how many Christian denominations are there? Thousands? People interpret the Bible however they wish. So another Christian can say, well, it says right here in the Bible, the way that I interpret it, that abortion is okay. You can totally, if your rhetoric is good, and if you're able to construct, at least on its face, a convincing argument, you can do that. So pointing to the Bible as a reason why we should be pro-life isn't a good argument, because people interpret Scripture however they wish, really.
Yeah, and a lot do. There's a lot of pro-choice Catholics out there. There's a lot of pro-choice Christians out there, and they're a minority, but
they're significant minority.
I don't think that they believe they're hypocrites. They think that they're consistent with their religious beliefs, and that's because of a that they've had that differs from most people of their faith. So they don't see themselves as hypocrites the way a lot of other Christians might. But I do know there are a lot of pro-life atheists out there. You don't tend to hear from them very much, but they exist. There's quite a few of them.
When you look at libertarian circles, I know this guy's kind of on the outs, but Molyneux is an atheist, libertarian in principle person who makes purely pro-life arguments. So the movement has its figureheads, so to speak.
Yeah, we talked a little bit earlier about conservative atheists, and Molyneux is a really good example of a very conservative, very atheist, and very much libertarian. Like, it's that trifecta there. So it's being an atheist doesn't belong to the leftists, I guess.
Yeah, that I would say it's true. All right, one more question from the listeners, and this one my brother asked. This one's from Jared, And he asks, does it take as much faith to be an atheist as it does to believe in God? Why or why not? And I guess the where that's coming from is because I grew up in a religious family. I got two brothers who one went to seminar. No, they're both going to seminar. My brother-in-law works in a church. My sister is very involved in a local church. And one of the arguments that Christians use is that, look at the world around you. It's so complicated. It's so vast. It's so intricate. And they would argue that it takes less faith to believe in a God that made everything as opposed to saying it all just happened by accident. What would you say to that?
So, I mean, I guess if that's the way you're defining faith, I mean, I think probably the question we have to start from is, what's your definition of faith? And my views on atheism and what you can objectively know are even controversial among my fellow atheists. I debate them on this point a lot. I mean, theists don't like it when I say it either. It's kind of an agnostic argument. You can't definitively prove one way or another if God exists. So I guess in that sense, to just decide that, you know what, I think atheism makes the most sense, you're kind of taking a leap of faith because you know that you can't disprove or prove the existence of God. I've talked to a few atheists like, well, no, there's no evidence for God. I'm like, I agree, but can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there's no God? And you can't, because we're talking about something that exists outside of our reality. So how can you prove or disprove that? I mean, kind of getting into the whole ontological argument here. And philosophy is something I'm interested in, but by no means I'm an expert in either. But I guess to answer the question is, it takes a certain amount of faith to be an atheist, but I would say not very much, just because atheists examine the evidence, and from everything that I see in the universe, it seems self-evident that all the ways that the various world religions describe God don't make sense in our universe. There's not really anything about the nature of the universe when we're talking about laws of physics. We're talking about life on this planet, natural selection and how evolution works. I mean, all of these things that are attributed to a creator have really good, sound scientific explanations behind them. And at that point, the only God that conceivably exists would be a deist type God. But I mean, what is the point of that? What do you even need it for? So I personally would say yes. It takes probably just a little bit of faith to commit to being an atheist. Not a lot, though.
Yeah, I've argued in the past that it takes at least a little bit of faith to believe in just about anything, because at the end of the day, we're all relying on our perceptions of the world on being accurate in order to inform our beliefs. So we all have to rely on our eyes, our ears, our feelings. We all have to rely on perceptions to judge the world around us. And as great as those perceptions are, as accurate as they may be, you always have to have at least a little bit of faith that they're telling you the truth. I don't remember what philosopher, I don't think it was Kant, I can't remember who it was though, that would try to say, hey, if we do live in if we lived in a matrix, how would we know? Because all we have to go by are our perceptions of the world.
Yeah.
And if those are all lying to us,
there's a lot of philosophical.
we never know.
There's a lot of philosophical thought experiments that follow that line of thinking. I mean, probably the earliest one that most people think of would be Plato's analogy of the cave.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same idea of people living in a cave, but they're presented this artificial reality that they have no reason to believe is not real. And yeah, it's the same. And I mean, really, like, the nature of God is unknowable. I think it's personally, in my experience, it's harder for a theist to admit that philosophical truth than it is for an atheist. Because a big part of being religious is, the feeling and having faith that you do know God and you have this relationship with God. But I mean, if you really examine what you can objectively know, nobody can know who, what, or where God is. I mean, that's the central question of metaphysics is, what is.
Yeah.
And when it comes to God, it's not really a definable concept in any good sense.
Yeah, one of the best purely secular arguments for the existence of God I've heard is the idea of the unmoved mover. The idea that causality is a constant. Everything in the universe that we can observe has a cause and an effect. And that goes for everything. Nothing happens that is uncaused. And everything that happens has an effect to it. And the idea is, if you take that back far enough, there has to be something that put the world into motion. There has to be something that was the uncaused cause, the unmoved mover. And that thing could only be God. What would you say to that? I can't remember who it was that put forth that argument, but I remember hearing it for the first time and thinking, you know what, that's a very convincing argument.
Well, I don't think it's so convincing just because there's a wealth of scientific explanations for that kind of determinism. There's a whole series of cause and effect going back to the beginnings of the universe, the Big Bang. And now you could say, well, okay, what started the Big Bang? Well, I mean, even there's an answer for that. You could say that a theory that's gaining traction now is that the Big Bang kind of was a result of the singularity at the end of a black hole in another universe, because that's what the Big Bang is you start with this infinitely dense singularity that exploded and created the universe. What's at the bottom of a black hole is that singularity. I mean, of course, you could ask, okay, so where did that universe come from? You could say, well, either that universe is infinite or there's just an infinite series of universes. Probably the former makes more sense than the latter, which is basically it's turtles all the way down. I mean, that's a silly thing to say. I mean, that's a reference to Stephen Hawking, if you read Brief History of Time. But I don't think that's really a convincing argument, the unmoved mover. I mean, the laws of physics are an unmoved mover for all intents and purposes. Then
I don't know. It's the idea of turtles all the way down for infinity, forever and ever and ever, with nothing to have caused or created any of it. It just so happens to be. That also doesn't seem too convincing to me.
and then
That it just is. It just is. It seemed like we were talking about before, takes a bit of a leap of faith to believe that it just is, just as much as it takes a leap of faith to believe that there's something that put it all into motion.
right, and I think probably the theists where faith comes in a lot more is believing that their particular religion is the right one, and their particular religion is the Word of God.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ultimately the most philosophically sound argument when it comes to the nature of God is, like I said, is agnostic. But I don't know if you're familiar with the Dawkins scale of religious probability. It's a scale from 1 to 7. 1 being a Gnostic theist, Gnosticism, or Gnostic meaning you know for certain, and then 7 being a Gnostic atheist. Now, even Dawkins himself, famous atheist, as you guys know, considers himself to be a 6 on that scale, which is, I believe, what is considered to be a de facto atheist or something along those lines. I think when it comes, if you're going to categorize religious beliefs using that scale, I think the worst positions to argue from are 1 and 7.
The extremes are the worst.
The absolutely God exists or the absolutely God does not exist positions.
Yeah. To make the claim that I know for certain there is no God, or vice versa, I know for certain there is a God.
I think the concept is just like, we're not that.
I think that's fair to say, because it is one of those things where you regardless of what side of the aisle you fall on, you can't really prove, and that's even acknowledged by Christianity. That's why the very notion of faith exists and why it's so important in the faith, because you can't prove it. It's not one of those things that you can run an experiment on, that you can just, use the scientific method to say, oh yes, this almighty being that breaks all the laws of physics and can't even be perceived by us. Yeah, he exists and we proved it using our own perception and scientific methods.
Well, that would be impossible.
And that's where faith in religion becomes so important.
It would be impossible to do that.
It would require faith of a different kind to say absolutely does not exist 100%, and I know that for sure, because you don't. You can't. Because if it did exist, if God did exist, we wouldn't, like I said, he wouldn't be perceivable, and you wouldn't be able to use a scientific method to prove anything about him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he wouldn't be God if we could find him.
I think we lost Zach. I don't see him anymore. He went away. Hey, let's talk crap about him while he's not here.
Did you lose faith in Zach?
Can you hear me now?
Hey!
I've been sitting here trying to jump in. I don't know what happened.
I heard you. I just thought Nathan was being rude.
Oh, so maybe. So if we could prove God, then he wouldn't be God. Because the whole point of God is that he's beyond our scope of reality.
Yeah.
If he's not, then he's not really worth worshiping, right?
Yeah, at that point he'd just be like a really powerful dude.
Yeah, it'd just be like an alien creator. Okay, well,
he would be cute.
I'm not gonna give you the.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna worship you because you're smarter and more powerful than me doesn't mean that you're necessarily morally right.
Yeah.
So, like God has to be unprovable in order for him to be God. So we'll argue about this till the end of time, most likely.
Hey, this stop camera button. If I click that, it's not gonna disconnect the call, right?
I don't think so.
I need to turn my camera off for just a second, okay?
Okay.
So it's just me and you now.
Disconnected him. Oops.
Oh my goodness! Why did you do that?
Well, we got to wrap up anyway. We're way past an hour.
Yeah, I guess we did go on for quite a bit. We went on quite a few tangents on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well. Well, that was your fault. You're the one that's going to have to apologize.
He's coming back. Here we go.
Oh, good.
All right.
Sorry, it does disconnect you from the call apparently.
Oh, okay.
But it's time to wrap up anyway because we're well past our hour.
Yeah. Well,
You're in Douglas County. Any events coming up the next week or so? 2 weeks? You got the lit drop.
We do have the lit drop for Tyler Glow running for West Side District 66 School Board. Our Libertarian candidate for school board, endorsed by the mayor. So I think that's a good sign. He's raised a lot of money. His campaign is off to a roaring start. So we're thinking he's gonna bring good primaries and hopefully get elected.
I almost didn't make it back tonight because we were actually shooting his commercial. So
okay.
That's why I was running a little behind.
I'm looking forward to see how that turns out.
It was well. Like he's polished up really well.
Yeah, more libertarians should learn that lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And looking the part does help when you're running for a public office.
In order to get someone to listen to you, you have to at least.
I thought this neck beard was required to be a libertarian.
See, Zach thought that for the longest time too. Now he just looks like Jonah Hill.
Look, my fiance is still very heartbroken that I don't have a beard.
I mean, ladies, they either love him or they hate him. There's no in between.
See, mine would hate
I feel
it
like
if I had a beard.
the ones that hate beards are not women that I would do well being with anyway. So
I agree.
And that's nothing against them. It just wouldn't be a good fit for me.
No.
Even when I don't have a beard. Because let's be honest, they prefer girly men like Nathan as opposed to manly men like us.
I will take you down, Jonah Hill.
All right, so Sarp, what do we got going on in Sarpy? Other than I might be moving there within the next month.
Well, there's that. We don't really have anything else going down in Sarpy until our mystery candidate announces his campaign.
I got to talk to him this week.
This mystery man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait on that one before any real activity starts up in Sarpy County. Because it's cold. I don't want to go outside and do stuff.
So you don't want to
outside
go house hunting? You don't want to go house hunting with me tomorrow?
My wife will probably go with you if you ask her to. She loves that stuff.
Today would have been the day to do it. It's too bad it's a work day because it was beautiful all today.
I called in. Well, I called in sick yesterday, and since they can't give me another point, I called in sick today too, because I'm still fighting this, and I wanted an extra day off so that when I go back on Monday, I'm actually well again. And being around a bunch of other people who are sick probably would not have helped that.
Probably not. Well, anyway, I think we do need to finally wrap this up because we've been rambling on for quite long enough. So I don't have any more events coming up. I think we covered it. When is Tyler Glow's next lit drop? What's the date on that?
Man, I wish I could tell you off the top of my head.
28th.
The 28th. All right, Zach, you're on top of it.
Zach's on point.
Yeah.
Well, just because I just talked to him.
I was just about to ask the other guests that are supposed to have here tonight because she just walked in a few minutes ago, but she's preoccupied with dinner, looks like. So, when is Tyler's lit drop? Week from Sunday, Heather said. So.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're all, does Tyler Glow have a website up?
Does Tyler have a website?
Oh, I think so.
I think it would be. I know his Facebook page is Tyler Glow for West Side School Board. That's his page on Facebook. You visit that page, and you'll have all the information you need coming events. And really, guys, this is when there's that. Well, there you go.
Glow is GLOE, everybody.
And if this is one of the Tyler Glow is one of those individuals that school board is not his final political stop. If he wins this race, he can go further.
Well, he doesn't have to win. He just needs to do well.
Yeah.
Like, obviously we want him to win, but this is his first race. He should win given all of the factors that are on his side. I really think he's got an advantage here. The mayor,
Yeah.
he's smart, young, energetic, has the time.
He's articulate.
Has probably a much bigger volunteer army than anyone else in this race.
Certainly.
'Cause big active family, and then a party that's, none of the other parties give a crap about this race.
And I mean, even though he doesn't necessarily have an education background, I'd say he's more than qualified.
Yeah. Education backgrounds are garbage anyway. Like, I learned how to teach. Like, shut up. Get out of here.
Any parent knows how to teach.
I spent a bunch of money
I
on
was homeschooled, so, like, it can't be that hard. My mom barely graduated high school. And that's not to say that my mom was dumb. My mom was brilliant. But she was a military brat, so getting through school was a little difficult for her.
All right, I guess to wrap this up, I mean, if we want this party to be a success and become a real political force in the state, supporting candidates like Tyler Glow now when they're running for school board is a must. Do we want more libertarians in the unicameral? Do we want solid libertarians running for governor, for Congress, for Senate, for these big fancy races that everyone wants to pay all their attention to? Yeah, we want that. But in order to have a legitimate shot at winning those races, we need individuals who have political experience at a lower level. Not everyone's going to be elected to president right out of office. Almost everybody starts their political career in city councils and school boards, and they propel themselves to state legislature, Congress from that ground, that.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
Okay.
You have to start at lower offices before you work your way up. So if you want libertarians to be successful, get out there and volunteer.
Absolutely, you have to start small. And we're starting small here in Douglas County. I mean, as a party, we've only been organized for a little over a year now, as an entity, and we've made a lot of progress. But it's still a pretty steep hill to climb, and so get out there and run for these local positions if you're interested. There's still time left. Deadline to register is on March 1st for county positions.
Sure.
Otherwise, vote Tyler Glow or wherever else you can vote for in your area.
Yeah. Tri-Cities is like about to have 3 people jump out and run. That's going to be awesome.
That is awesome.
They hit the ground running so hard. They're such a good chapter. Anyway, have a great week, Nebraska.
Right.
Everyone say goodbye.
Yeah. Well,
All right. Good night. all.
BJ, we'll talk to you again soon in the future. Everybody, have a good night and enjoy your weekend.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Enjoy your week. I'm not going to be that fast.